What is up, guys? Holy Instinct here. It's a little bit late, so sometimes I might move out the way and the light will be shining, so forgive me. Say hi, Rio. Say hi. But anyways, we got to read with me today. We're going to be starting out at 2 Samuel's chapter 17. And this is about King David. And he's currently, in this context, out on the run, running away from Absalom. So Absalom is the person who killed Ammon, who raped his sister. So this guy is like apparently he was the handsomest guy back in the day. Head to toe, the Bible says he had no flaws. But he's chasing David out of his God-ordained position. And he is trying to kill David. So this is where chapter 17 leaves off, where he's being chased. David's being chased. And I'm pretty sure he's about to turn this around. So let's get right into it. And let's go. One day, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Here's what I suggest. Rio, what? What do you want? He's distracting me. Okay. He said, choose 12,000 men, start out tonight, and go after David. Attack him while he's tired and weak. Fill him with terror. Then all the people who are with him will run away. Don't strike down anyone except the king." Verse 3 says, bring all of the other people back after the man you want to kill is dead. Everyone else will return to you, and none of the people will be harmed. Verse 4 says, Ahithophel's plan seemed good to Absalom. It also seemed good to all of the elders of Israel. Verse 5, but Absalom said, send for Hushai, the Archite. Then we can find out what he suggests. My face is itchy. Verse 6, Hushai came to him. Absalom said, Ahithophel has given us his advice. Should we do what he says? If we shouldn't, tell us what you would do. Verse 7, Hushai replied to Absalom, the advice Ahithophel has given you isn't good this time. Verse 8, you know your father and his men, they are fighters. They are as strong as a wild bear whose cubs have been stolen from her. Besides, your father really knows how to fight. He won't spend the night with his troops. Verse 9, in fact, he's probably hiding in a cave or some other place now. Suppose he attacks your troops first. When people hear about it, they'll say, many of the troops who followed Absalom have been killed. Verse 10, then the hearts of your soldiers will melt away in fear. Even those who are as brave as a lion will be terrified. That's because everyone in Israel knows that your father is a fighter. They know that those who are with him are brave. Verse 11, so here's what I suggest. Bring together all the men of Israel from the town of Dan all the way to Beersheba. They are as many as the grains of sand on the seashore. You yourself should lead them into battle. Excuse you. He's looking at this. What, you want it? Verse 12, then we'll attack David no matter where we find him. As dew completely covered the ground, we'll completely overpower his entire army. We won't leave him or any of his men alive. Verse 13, he might try to get away by going into a city. If he does, all of us will bring ropes to that city. We'll drag the whole city down. I shouldn't have given him that. Into the valley. No one will be able to find even a piece of that city. Verse 14. Absalom and all the men of Israel agreed. They said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. The Lord has decided that Ahithophel's good advice would fall. The Lord wanted to bring horrible trouble on Absalom. So yeah, Absalom trying to kill David was not a part of the God's plan. Verse 15, Hushai spoke to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. He said, Ahithophel has given advice to Absalom and the elders of Israel. He suggested that they should do one thing that I suggested, but I suggested something else. Verse 16, send a message right away. Tell David, don't spend the night at the place in the desert where people can go across the Jordan River. Make sure you go across. If you don't, you and all of the people who are with you will be swallowed up. Verse 17, Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying at En Rogel, just outside Jerusalem. They knew they would be in danger if anyone saw them entering the city. A female servant was supposed to go and tell them what had happened. Then they were supposed to go to tell King David. Verse 18, but a young man saw Jonathan and Ahimaaz and told Absalom about it. So the two men left quickly. They went to the house of a man in Bahiram. He had a well in his courtyard. They climbed down into it. Verse 19, the man's wife got a covering and spread it out over the opening of the well. Then she scattered grain on the covering, so no one knew that the men were hiding in the well. Verse 20, Absalom's men came to the house. They asked the woman, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? She answered, they went across the brook. When the men looked around, they didn't find anyone, so they returned to Jerusalem. Clutch. Verse 21, after the men had gone, Jonathan and Ahimaaz climbed out of the well. They went to tell King David what they found out. They said to him, go across the river right away. Ahithophel has told Absalom how to come after you and strike you down. Okay. Verse 22. So David and all the people who were with him started out. They went across the Jordan River. By sunrise, everyone had crossed over. Verse 23. Ahithophel saw that his advice wasn't being followed. So he put a saddle on his donkey. He started out for his house in his hometown. When he got there, he put everything in order. He made out his will. Then he killed himself. So he died and his body was buried in his father's tomb. Well, that escalated. Verse 24. David went to Mahanaim. Absalom went across the Jordan River with all of the men of Israel. Verse 25, Absalom had made Amasa commander of the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of the man named Jether. Jether belonged to the family line of Ishmael. He had gotten married to Abigail. She was the daughter of Nahash and the sister of Zeruiah. Zeruiah was the mother of Joab. Verse 26, Absalom and the people of Israel camped in the land of Gilead. Verse 27, David came to Mahanaim. Shobi, the son of Nahash, met him there. Shobi was from Rabbah in the land of Ammon. Machir, the son of Amiel from Lodabar, met him there too. So did Barzillai from Rogelim in the land of Gilead. Verse 28, they brought beds, bowls, and clay pots. They brought wheat, barley, flour, and grain that had been cooked. They brought beans and lentils. Verse 29, they brought honey, butter, sheep, and cheese that was made from cow's milk. They brought all the food for David and his people to eat. They said, these people have become hungry. They've become tired and thirsty in the desert. Absalom dies. Chapter 18. David brought together the men who were with him. He appointed commanders of thousands over some of them. He appointed commanders of hundreds over the others. Verse 2, then David set the troops out in 3 companies. One company was under the The command of Joab. Another was under Joab's brother Abishai, the son of Zeruiah. The last was under Ittai the Gittite. The king told the troops, "You can be sure that I myself will march out with you." Verse 3. Oh. But the men said, "You must not march out. If we are forced to run away, our enemies won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. So it would be better for you to stay here in the city. Then you can send us help if we need." Verse 4, the king said, "I'll do what you think is best." So the king stood beside the city gate. The whole army marched out in companies of hundreds and companies of thousands. Verse 5, the king gave an order to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai. He commanded them, "Be gentle with the young man Absalom. Do it for me." All the troops heard the king give the commanders that order about Absalom. Verse 6, David's army marched into the field to fight against Israel. The battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. Verse 7, there David's men won the battle over Israel's army. A huge number of men were wounded or killed that day. A total number was 20,000. Verse 8, the fighting spread out over the whole countryside. But more men were killed in that forest that day than out in the open. Verse 9, Absalom happened to come across some of David's men. He was riding his mule. The mule went under the thick branches of large oak tree. Absalom's head got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in the air. The mule he was riding kept on going. Verse 10, one of David's men saw what had happened. He told Joab, "I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree." Verse 11, Joab said to the man, "What? You saw him. Why didn't you strike him down right there? Then I would have had to give you 4 ounces of silver and a soldier's belt." Verse 12, but the man replied, "I wouldn't lift my hand to harm the king's son. I wouldn't do it even for 25 pounds of silver. We heard the king's command to you and Abishai and Ittai. He said, 'Be careful not to hurt the young man Absalom. Do it for me.'" Verse 13, suppose I had put my life in danger by killing him. The king would have found out about it. Nothing is hidden from him, and you wouldn't have stood up for me. Verse 14, Joab said, "I'm not going to waste more time on you." So he got 3 javelins. He went over and drove them into Absalom's heart. Oh my goodness. He did it while Absalom was still hanging there alive in the oak tree. Verse 15, 10 of the men who were carrying Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck him down and killed him. Verse 16, then Joab blew his trumpet. He ordered his troops to stop chasing Israel's army. Verse 17, Joab's men threw Absalom's body into a big pit in the forest. They covered his body with a large pile of rocks. While all of that was going on, all of the Israelites ran back to their homes. Verse 18, earlier in his life, Absalom had set up a pillar in the king's valley. He had put it up as a monument to himself. He thought, "I don't have a son to carry on the memory of my name." So he named the pillar after himself. It is still called Absalom's monument to this very day. David sobs over Absalom. Verse 19. Ahimaaz said to Joab, "Let me run and take the news to the king. Let me tell him that the Lord has saved him from the power of his enemies." Ahimaaz was the son of Zadok. Verse 20 says, "I don't want you to take the news to the king today," Joab told him. "You can do it some other time, but you must not do it today, because the king's son is dead." Verse 21, then Joab said to a man from Cush, "Go, tell the king what you have seen." The man bowed in front of Joab. Then he ran off. Verse 22, Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, spoke again to Joab. He said, "I don't care what happens to me. Please let me run behind the man from Cush." But Joab replied, "My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward." Verse 23 says, he said, "I don't care what happens. I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran across the flatlands of the Jordan River. As he ran, he passed the man from Cush. Verse 24, David was sitting in an area between the inner and outer gates of the city. The man was on guard duty and went up to the roof over the entrance of the gate by the wall. As he looked out, he saw someone running alone. Verse 25, he called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If the runner is alone, he must be bringing good news." The man came closer and closer. Oh no. Verse 26, then the man on guard duty saw another man running. He called out to the man who was guarding the gate. He said, "Look, there's another man running alone." The king said, "He must be bringing good news too." Verse 27, the man on guard duty said, "I can see that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok." "He's a good man," the king said. "He's bringing good news." Verse 28, then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "Everything's all right." He bowed down in front of the king with his face toward the ground. He said, "You are my king and master. Give praise to the Lord your God. He has handed over to you the men who lifted their hands to kill you." Verse 29 says, the king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw total disorder. I saw it just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me to you, but I don't know what it was all about." Verse 30, the king said, "Stand over there and wait." So he stepped over to one side and stood there. Verse 31, then the man from Cush arrived. He said, "You are my king and master. I'm bringing you some good news. The Lord has saved you today from all those who were trying to kill you." Verse 32 says, the king asked the man from Cush, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The man replied, "King David, may your enemies be like that young man. May all those who rise up to harm you be like him." Verse 33, the king was very upset. He went up to the room over the entrance of the gate and sobbed as he went. He said, "My son Absalom, my son Absalom. I wish I had died instead of you. Absalom, my son, my son." So we'll leave it off there. But he ended up dying. And this, I'm pretty sure, was the result of David's curse by God. When David took that guy's wife, who he saw in the bath while she was bathing, and had sex with her, God ended up putting a curse on him, saying, "I think your sons will die." So this was a result of one of them. And there was another one. I think God says that his wives will be, like, men will have sex with his wives in public. But we haven't yet read that. But I'm curious how that's going to play out. But yeah, so that's going to be it for today, guys. Today was pretty good. I worked out. And I'm starting to do dopamine fast, where I pretty much lay off the video games, lay off the social media, anything that's like super pleasurable, to try and reset my dopamine levels. And it was really hard today, but I know it's going to pay off and help me with my journey on following God. So I'll keep giving updates on that. But yeah, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you're still here, you guys are awesome. Jesus is proud of you. And just keep on following him, and you won't be disappointed. As always, stay free and get free. Shalom, shalom.